So today's topic is going to be rational expressions. Rational expressions is another name for calling algebraic fractions. So in this case, we will have an expression on the numerator part and an expression on the denominator part. So that's why we have an algebraic fraction. We will start today seeing how to simplify rational expressions with monomial denominator. Remember, a monomial it's only one term. So today on the denominator part, we will have only one term. And it says, a little note here, we can change an exponent from numerator to denominator or vice versa if we change its signs. That means if we have a to the 7 on the numerator part, we can change it to the denominator as an a to the minus 7. It's the same, we have a b squared on the denominator. If we want to change it to the numerator, we can change it as a v to the minus 2. So we can move a letter with its power from the numerator to the denominator or vice versa if we change the sign. So how to do the simplification today? It's going to be very simple. First, we need to do the prime decomposition and simplification of the numerical values. We need also to subtract the powers from the same variable. That means if we have the same letter, we will make a little subtraction. It's going to be very simple. And it will be always numerator minus denominator. But what will happen? Because sometimes we will have an answer that is going to be a negative power. The final answer cannot be written with negative power. So the final answer, always we will write it with exponents in a positive way. How to do it? It's going to be very simple. If we follow this note, we can change an exponent from one side to the other of the fraction if we change its sign. So let's see some examples. The first example is going to be something like this. We have 20 and 16. So the first thing we need to do is we need to do the prime decomposition of those numbers. 2 it's 10, 2 it's 5, 5 it's 1, and this one is going to be 2, 8, 2, 4, 2, 2, 2, 1. So this one we can write it a little bit different. We can put it as 2 squared that multiplies 5, and all of them, a to the 7, b to the 5, d to the third, c squared. On the bottom it's going to be 2 to the 4, a to the third, b squared, d, c squared. What happens next? It's going to be, we can do the simplification of the numerical values. So we have 2 squared and 2 to the fourth. It's going to be only 2 squared on the denominator part. The 5 will stay in the numerator part. And what will happen with the letters? What will happen with the letters? Remember, we need to subtract the powers. Always numerator minus denominator. So it's going to be a 7 minus 3. B, it's going to be 5 minus 2. Then I will write C because remember the answer will be always ordered. 2 minus 2. And finally it's going to be D, 3 minus 1. So let's see, it's going to be 5 quarters. And what about the letters? It's going to be A to the 4, B to the third, C to the 0. Everything to the 0 is 1. And it's going to be d squared. So we can write it like this, or we can put it in a single fraction as the only thing we have in the denominator it's a 4, and it's going to be 5a to the 4th, b to the third, d squared. And this is going to be our actual final answer. So it's not very difficult. It's only doing prime decomposition, subtraction of the powers, and writing the answer always with exponents in a positive way in a single fraction. Let's see other example. So let's see, the second example is going to be something like this. So first it's going to be negative divided by a positive. So our answer is going to be a negative fraction. So let's see, if we decompose the 125 and we decompose the 525. So the 125 is going to be 525, 5 it's going to be 5, 5 it's going to be 1. And the 525 is going to be divided by 3. It's going to be 175 divided by 5. It's going to be 35 divided by 5. It's going to be 7, and divided by 7 it's going to be 1. So this fraction we can write it again as 5 cubed that multiplies x to the 7, y to the third, c squared. And on the bottom it's going to be 3 that multiplies 5 squared that multiplies 7, x to the 4, y to the 8, c to the 3. So we can do the simplification of the numbers. It's going to be 5 squared. 5 to the third is going to be only a 5 on the numerator part. What happens with the other numbers? It's going to be 3 that multiplies 7. What about the letters? It's going to be x to the 7 minus 4. Then it's going to be y to the third minus 8. And c it's going to be 2 minus 3. So it's going to be minus 5 over 21, x to the 3, y to the minus 5, and c to the minus 1. Remember, we cannot have an answer with negative powers, so this answer is going to be minus 5x cubed on the numerator, and on the denominator is going to be 21 y to the 5 c. This one is going to be our final answer. So it's very simple as we do it on the other example. It's prime decomposition of the numbers and simplification of those numerical values. Subtract the powers of every letter that it's the same. Always numerator minus denominator. And the answer, the final answer, must be always ordered and in a positive way in the case of the powers. So this one is going to be our final answer. Let's see another example. So the third example is going to be something like this. So in this case, it's going to be negative divided by negative. It's going to be positive. We don't need to write it. I will put it here for explanation purposes, but we don't need to write it. And it's going to be after that. We can decompose the numbers. 5. We cannot decompose it. The 10 is going to be 5 multiplied by 2. Then it's going to be a to the 4 n squared m to the third. The other one is going to be n squared a m cubed a to the 4. So let's see. It's going to be 5 and 5 disappear, so it's going to be only 1 divided by 2. What about the letters? It's going to be a, it's going to be 4 minus 4. M is going to be 3 minus 3. And it's going to be 2 minus 2, so it's going to be 1/2. A to the 0, that it's 1. M to the 0, that it's 1. N to the 0, that it's 1. So this answer is going to be only 1/2 without any letters. So sometimes all the letters will disappear and we will have only numbers. What happens then if everything on the numerator eliminates with everything on the denominator? It's going to be 1 because it's going to be the same number divided by the same number, so it's going to be 1. That's super important because sometimes some people think that if we have something like this, I will put it here, a squared b divided by a squared b. Some people do this and they say this one it's a 0. No, this one it will be a number 1. If everything eliminates on the numerator and the denominator, it's going to be only a 1 as an answer because it's going to be as dividing two numbers that is exactly the same. So that's why it's going to be only 1. Let's do one last example. So what happens when we have a fraction divided by a fraction? So let's see here. First, it's going to be simple. Negative divided by a positive, it's going to be negative. So our answer is going to be negative. What happens then? It's going to be 3/4 divided by 9/16. That means we can flip the second fraction in order to be a multiplication, and it's going to be 3/4 that multiplies 16/9. What can we do next? We can decompose the numbers, and it's going to be 3 times, if I decompose the 16, it's going to be 2 to the 4. And on the bottom, it's going to be 2 squared, the 4, that multiplies 3 squared. So this one, we can write it as 2 to the 4 times 3, 2 squared times 3 squared. And the letters, of course, x squared, c to the 7, y to the 4. And it's going to be, if maybe we can like put it in order, or maybe we can put it like they are. I will put it like they are, and it's going to be c to the 4, x, y to the 8. After that, of course, it's going to be negative. It's going to be the numbers 2 to the 4 and 2 squared is going to be 2 squared on the numerator part. The 3 and the 3 squared is going to be only 3 on the denominator. It's going to be x, it's going to be 2 minus 1. Y, it's going to be 4 minus 8. C, it's going to be 7 minus 4. So it's going to be 2 squared, it's 4 thirds, x to the 1, y to the minus 4, and c to the 3. Remember, we cannot have negative powers in our final answer, so the final answer is going to be on the superior part 4x c cubed, and on the inferior part is going to be 3y to the 4. And this is going to be our final answer. So doing rational expression simplification with monomial denominator, it's very simple. Remember always to follow the steps. Prime decomposition and simplification of the numerical values. After that, do the subtraction of the powers of those letters that are common in the numerator and denominator. And after that, remember our final answer must be written always with the exponents in a positive way. So if we have a negative power here, we can change it to the denominator part. So that will be it for today's topic, that was rational expressions with monomial denominator.